Welcome to Ian Cinema, your destination for endless entertainment and unforgettable movie moments. Discover exciting films, inspiring stories, and cinematic journeys across every genre. Whether you love action, drama, thrillers, or timeless favorites, there's always something waiting for you here. Sit back, enjoy the experience, and let Ian Cinema bring the magic of movies to your screen. Herbie, Fully Loaded is a 2005 American sports comedy film directed by Angela Robinson. The screenplay was written by Thomas Lennon, Robert Bangarant, and Smallville creators Alfred Gough and Miles Millar. It is the sixth and final installment in the Herbie film series, following the 1997 television film The Love Bug. It also marks the franchise's first theatrical release since Herbie Goes Bananas, 1980, serving as a direct sequel to the earlier films. The movie stars Lindsay Lohan, Justin Long, Breckin Meyer, Matt Dillon, and Michael Keaton. It also features cameo appearances by several well-known NASCAR drivers, including Jeff Gordon, Jimmy Johnson, Tony Stewart, and Dale Jarrett. Herbie, Fully Loaded premiered at the Las Vegas Motor Speedway on May 10, 2005, and was released in the United States on June 24, 2005, by Buena Vista Pictures Distribution. The film received mixed reviews from critics and general audiences, although longtime fans of the Herbie franchise responded more positively. Despite the mixed critical reception, it performed well at the box office, earning approximately $144.1 million worldwide against a production budget of $50 million. The story begins with Herbie, a lovable Volkswagen Beetle that has a personality and mind of its own. After suffering a series of racing defeats and losing his owner, Jim Douglas, Herbie is retired and sent to a junkyard. Meanwhile, Maggie Payton, the youngest member of the Payton racing family, graduates from college and prepares to begin an internship with the SPN. However, her passion for racing is about to lead her on an unexpected adventure when her path crosses with Herbie. After graduating from college, Maggie Payton prepares to move to New York to pursue a career in sports journalism. As a graduation gift, her father, Ray Payton Sr., takes her to a junkyard to choose a car. While looking around, Maggie is unexpectedly drawn to Herbie, a lively 1963 Volkswagen Beetle who frees himself from a crane and lands on the very car she was about to buy. Intrigued by the quirky little Beetle, Maggie chooses Herbie instead. Herbie soon leads Maggie to her mechanic friend, Kevin, who helps repair the car and invites her to a local car show to purchase replacement parts. During the event, Herbie playfully tricks Maggie into wearing a racing suit and helmet before challenging NASCAR champion Trip Murphy to an impromptu race. Against all odds, Herbie defeats Trip by the narrowest of margins. Excited by her natural talent, Kevin encourages Maggie to race professionally. However, Ray Sr. strongly objects because he has forbidden her from racing ever since a serious street racing accident years earlier. Meanwhile, Trip becomes obsessed with both Herbie and the mysterious driver who defeated him. Determined to get revenge, he organizes a local racing competition to lure Herbie back for a rematch. Maggie and Kevin enter the event after upgrading Herbie with a fresh street racing look and performance parts. Together, they easily defeat the competition and earn a place in the final race against Trip. Before the race begins, Trip convinces Maggie to compete for pink slips. Herbie becomes jealous after sensing Maggie's desire to win Trip's prized stock car instead of simply enjoying the race. Their lack of teamwork leads to a costly mistake, and they lose the race. Maggie is publicly humiliated, Herbie is towed away, and both Kevin and Ray Sr. express their disappointment. Encouraged by her best friend, Charisma, Maggie refuses to give up on racing. She attempts to buy Herbie back from Trip but discovers that he has entered the beloved Beetle into a demolition derby. Desperate to save him, Maggie rushes into the arena during the event and tearfully asks Herbie to forgive her. After Herbie saves her from being crushed by a monster truck, the pair escape together and amazingly win a demolition derby. They return to Kevin's garage, where Herbie, badly damaged and exhausted, finally breaks down. At the same time, the Payton racing team faces financial difficulties and may have to withdraw from an upcoming NASCAR Nextel Cup Series race. Maggie's brother, Ray Payton Jr., has suffered 2 major crashes, leaving the team without a competitive driver. Although Ray Sr. still refuses to let Maggie race, Ray Jr. secretly decides she deserves the opportunity and asks the Payton crew to prepare her for the event. Kevin completely rebuilds Herbie into a NASCAR race car. Before the race begins, Maggie and Herbie share a heartfelt moment, strengthening the bond that had been tested throughout the story. Trip, however, warns Maggie that the race will be dangerous and vows to defeat Herbie once and for all. The race starts slowly for Maggie and Herbie, but they gradually work their way through the field, overtaking one competitor after another. During the race, Ray Sr., who has been watching from home, realizes his daughter has what it takes and rushes to the track to become her crew chief. Later in the race, Herbie becomes trapped between several competitors but escapes by driving over NASCAR driver Tony Stewart's car. The maneuver damages Herbie's oil system, forcing another pit stop. With no time to spare, the Payton crew removes a replacement part from Sally's yellow New Beetle and other Volkswagen that Herbie has admired throughout the film. Although the temporary repair is fragile, it allows Herbie to continue racing. In the closing laps, Maggie catches up to Trip. Desperate to win, Trip repeatedly tries to force her into the wall. During his final attempt, Maggie brakes at the perfect moment, causing Trip to lose control. His car crashes into Jeff Gordon's vehicle before flipping upside down. With Trip blocking the track, Herbie performs one final incredible stunt by climbing onto the catch fencing and driving around the wreck before safely returning to the racing surface. Maggie and Herbie cross the finish line first, giving the Payton family another NASCAR victory. Ray Sr. finally accepts his daughter's talent and proudly congratulates her, while Ray Jr. celebrates alongside the team. Trip, unable to convince anyone that Herbie is actually alive, is taken away in ambulance after being dismissed as delusional. The film ends on a heartwarming note as Maggie and Kevin share a kiss, while Ray Sr. jokingly reminds Herbie and Sally's sentient New Beetle not to stay out too late because another race awaits. Behind the scenes in their 2011 screenwriting book Writing Movies for Fun and Profit, co-writers Robert Vanguard and Thomas Lennon explain how they developed the remake. As longtime fans of the original The Love Bug films, they wanted to modernize the story by placing Herbie in a more realistic world instead of the exaggerated, cartoonish setting of the older movies. Their vision centered on the competitive street racing culture of California's San Fernando Valley, where an old, beat-up Volkswagen would initially be mocked before earning everyone's respect by winning races. The writers revealed that Disney approved of the project after reading only the first draft. However, they later faced creative challenges when a new studio executive took over the project. Unlike then Disney president Bob Iger, who had supported their original vision, the new executive had not been involved in the initial pitch and reportedly struggled to understand what made the story special. Production principal photography began on August 2, 2004, in Los Angeles and concluded in November of the same year. To promote the film during the 2005 NASCAR Nextel Cup Series season, drivers Dale Jarrett and Scott Riggs raced with special paint schemes inspired by Herbie. Fully loaded, the movie also featured extensive product placement. Maggie Payton is portrayed as a former ESPN reporter, reflecting Disney's ownership of the sports network. A billboard for Mid-America Motorworks, a supplier of classic Volkswagen parts, appears during the scene where Trip attempts to sabotage Herbie. Volkswagen supplied several vehicles, including a Volkswagen Touareg and a new Beetle. While General Motors provided a 2005 Chevrolet Corvette and a 2005 Pontiac GTO for racing sequences, many of the NASCAR scenes were filmed during real racing events at California Speedway, including the 2004 Target House 300 Busch Series race and the 2004 Pop Secret 500 Cup Series race. Dale Earnhardt Jr.'s famous number 8 car briefly appears, although its Budweiser logos were removed and replaced with his signature to avoid advertising alcohol in the family film. Sharp-eyed viewers can also spot Dominic Toretto's iconic 1970 Dodge Charger from The Fast and the Furious sitting in the junkyard. Additionally, Kit from the classic television series Knight Rider makes a small cameo in a newspaper during the opening sequence. ABC Family aired a promotional behind-the-scenes feature titled Herbie, Fully Loaded and Retooled, hosted by Lindsay Lohan, on June 21, 2005. Box office performance: Herbie, Fully Loaded opened in 3,521 theaters across North America and earned $12.8 million during its opening weekend, finishing fourth at the domestic box office. By the end of its theatrical run, the film had earned approximately $66 million in North America and $78.1 million internationally, bringing its worldwide total to $144.1 million. Critical reception: on Rotten Tomatoes, the film holds a 40% approval rating based on 141 reviews, with an average score of 5.3. Critics generally described it as an enjoyable family film that entertained children but offered little for adult audiences. Alongside Herbie Goes Bananas, it remains one of the lowest-rated entries in the franchise. On Metacritic, the movie received a score of 47 out of 100, based on 31 reviews, indicating mixed or average reception. Despite the mixed critical response, audiences were much more positive, awarding the film an A Cinema score. Film critic Roger Ebert gave the movie 2 out of 4 stars, describing it as overly corny but likely enjoyable for younger children. Empire magazine also awarded it 2 out of 5 stars, praising Herbie's charm while criticizing the performances and feeling that the beloved franchise deserved a stronger revival. Overall review: Herbie, Fully Loaded delivers exactly what fans expect from a family-friendly adventure, a light-hearted mix of comedy, action, and heart. Lindsay Lohan gives an energetic performance as Maggie Payton, a young woman determined to prove herself in the male-dominated world of NASCAR despite her father's objections. Michael Keaton adds warmth and humor as the overprotective Ray Payton Sr., while Herbie once again steals every scene with his lovable personality. Although the story follows a predictable formula, the exciting racing sequences, entertaining humor, and nostalgic appeal make the film enjoyable for viewers of all ages. It successfully introduces the iconic love bug to a new generation while preserving the charm that made the original film so memorable. For families and longtime Herbie fans, Herbie, Fully Loaded remains a fun and uplifting racing adventure filled with heart, determination, and plenty of high-speed excitement. Maggie soon finds herself competing against former NASCAR champion Trip Murphy, played by Matt Dillon. Through her journey with Herbie, she discovers that the little car has a special charm that can help change the direction of her own life, while also giving her struggling family's racing legacy a much-needed boost. Herbie, Fully Loaded is a fun piece of family entertainment, packed with enough humor and excitement to keep its engine running smoothly. The racing sequences are energetic and thrilling, creating moments that had audiences cheering during early screenings. Michael Keaton delivers a warm and believable performance as a real-life NASCAR father, while Lindsay Lohan once again proves why she was one of the most appealing stars of family movies at the time. Although the film includes a few mild expressions, some dishonest behavior, and occasional questionable choices, it ultimately promotes positive messages about family, honesty, determination, and following your dreams. Watching Herbie return to the road is an enjoyable experience for both parents and children. The famous 1963 Volkswagen Beetle is back for another adventure. After spending time forgotten in a junkyard, Herbie is ready for a brand new ride. The fourth sequel in the franchise, Herbie, Fully Loaded, follows the lovable little car as he finds himself in the hands of Maggie Payton, a young woman from a legendary NASCAR family. Maggie is the youngest member of the Payton racing dynasty. While her grandfather was once celebrated in the sport, her father and brother are struggling to keep the family name alive. Unlike the rest of her family, Maggie has just graduated from college and has a promising career opportunity waiting for her at ESPN. However, one of her biggest dreams is earning her father's respect and approval. Although their relationship is difficult at first, her father eventually supports her when she needs him the most. Maggie quickly develops a deep connection with Herbie, seeing him not just as a car but as a true teammate. Even though she is highly competitive, she is willing to sacrifice victory if it means protecting Herbie from harm. When Herbie suffers from an oil leak and faces destruction during a demolition derby, Maggie risks everything to save him. Later, Herbie returns the favor by rescuing her when a massive monster truck nearly runs her over. Before their final race, Maggie honestly admits to Herbie that she once destroyed a car, joking that she may need to have him exorcised. Trip Murphy, meanwhile, believes Herbie is a possessed vehicle. When Maggie first discovers the car in the junkyard, the glove compartment opens and reveals a note saying, "Please take care of Herbie. Whatever your problem, he will help you find the answer." Maggie humorously responds, "Great, a fortune cookie on wheels." The movie includes some subtle jokes and suggestive humor, but it remains mostly family-friendly. Maggie occasionally wears revealing outfits, including short shirts and tight shirts, but her behavior is portrayed as confident and respectful. During a quick clothing change before an unexpected race, she asks Kevin, her love interest, to stand guard and not look. Kevin tries to sneak a glance, but Herbie quickly prevents him from doing so. At a drive-in movie, Kevin attempts to put his arm around Maggie, but she politely removes it despite clearly liking him. Later, they share a brief kiss. While Maggie keeps her romance innocent and restrained, Herbie has no problem showing affection for the love of his life, a bright yellow Volkswagen Beetle with a black bra. His windows fog up and his antenna shakes as he admires her, leading Maggie to jokingly tell him, "She's too young for you." Trip Murphy also gets a humorous moment when he tells his assistant to handle his interactions with female fans differently, joking that when women give him their numbers, he should get pictures instead because he already does enough charity work. Like earlier Herbie films, Fully Loaded relies heavily on physical comedy. Characters get hit, knocked around, and crash into various objects, but nobody suffers serious injuries on screen. Some of the exaggerated accidents would have much more dangerous consequences in real life. For example, when Trip attempts to modify Herbie, the car fights back by slamming him with its hood, shocking him, and spraying him with fluids. Herbie also launches a driver from his seat into the stands during a derby and drags another character through the dirt using a chain attached to his bumper. The movie features several high-speed crashes, but they were presented in a cartoon-like and non-graphic way. During the demolition derby, a giant monster truck designed to look like a creature chases Herbie, leaving him damaged and beaten up. Maggie enters the arena to save him and narrowly avoids being hit multiple times. In the final showdown, Trip tries to crash his car into Herbie but loses control and ends up being taken away in an ambulance. The film includes mild uses of phrases like "God" and "Oh my God," along with small insults such as "jerk" and repeated use of "crap." Maggie's biggest conflict comes from her father forbidding her from racing. She ignores him and even lies by claiming someone else is driving Herbie during races. However, by the end of the film, Maggie apologizes and admits that her dishonesty damaged the trust of the people she cares about. The movie also references Maggie's past as a street racer, although illegal street racing is never directly discussed. She and Herbie challenge trip outside the official track. Maggie even makes a risky side bet during one race, putting Herbie's ownership papers on the line. While real NASCAR events often feature alcohol advertising, the filmmakers avoided focusing heavily on beer promotions. There are, however, a few product placements, including Viagra advertisements on a stock car. Younger viewers may also find certain moments frightening, such as a scene where Maggie and Kevin watch a movie featuring a skeleton chasing a girl, rather than completely modernizing Herbie into a trendy character. Herbie, Fully Loaded respects the charm and personality of the original films. The movie keeps the spirit of the franchise alive while introducing the beloved Beetle to a new generation. Herbie may receive some upgrades, but he never loses what makes him special. Herbie, Fully Loaded is the sixth film in Disney's Herbie franchise, following The Love Bug, 1968, Herbie Rides Again, 1974, Herbie Goes to Monte Carlo, 1977, Herbie Goes Bananas, 1980, and The Love Bug, 1997. The movie works as a sequel rather than a reboot, as the opening credits feature clips from previous Herbie adventures. The story begins in classic Herbie fashion, with the lovable, non-speaking Volkswagen Beetle with the famous number 53 causing trouble after being abandoned in a junkyard, when Ray Payton Sr., played by Michael Keaton, takes his daughter Maggie, played by Lindsay Lohan, to buy a fixer-upper car as a college graduation gift. Herbie's unusual behavior leads her to restore and keep him. This version of Herbie can blink his headlights, form expressions with his bumper, rock with excitement, and perform other movements that humans somehow fail to notice. Some of Herbie's movements are achieved through practical effects, while others rely on computer-generated animation. Similar to films like Babe, the effects bring personality to a real animal-like character. By 2005 standards, the visual effects worked well, even though they may appear dated today. However, the exaggerated effects fit perfectly with the playful style of the original Herbie movies. The biggest update is the NASCAR setting, complete with appearances from real racing personalities and their cars. The movie also borrows some elements from the Fast and the Furious franchise, especially with its underground racing scenes. While it does not fully parody those films, the racing competitions have a similar energy and style. One memorable sequence recreates the famous inside the engine camera shot often seen in racing movies, showing the power building inside the vehicle. But this is not a typical muscle car. It is Herbie the Love Bug, and his engine comes to life in a colorful, cartoon-inspired way that perfectly matches his unique personality. Oh, and another interesting detail. The second unit director and stunt coordinator was the legendary Spiro Razatos, who later worked on major action films like Fast 5, Fast Furious 6, Furious 7, The Fate of the Furious, and Fast X, along with projects such as Maniac Cop, Columbiana 2, and many others. Looking back, it feels like Fast 5 was the point where the Fast Furious franchise finally caught up with the kind of exaggerated, cartoon-like action physics that Herbie Fully Loaded was already experimenting with. Another fascinating connection comes from a detailed online source claiming that the car Maggie finds sitting in the junkyard is actually Dom's Charger stunt car from the first Fast and the Furious movie, the same one that was destroyed at the end of that film. At the time, only The Fast and the Furious and Too Fast Too Furious had been released, and the second film did not feature Dom or his iconic car, so there was no obvious reason to believe the vehicle would ever be needed again. Much like the young character in Karate Kid Legends, where his mother tries to keep him away from fighting, Maggie has been banned from racing ever since a crash left her hospitalized after she drove into a tree. She accepts that her racing dreams are over, focuses on her education, earns a college degree, and lands an internship at ESPN. But everything changes when she discovers Herbie. The magical Volkswagen doesn't exactly ask for permission. It takes her on a wild, unforgettable ride and reignites the passion she thought she had lost. Herbie also brings mechanic Kevin, played by Justin Long, back into her life. The two appear to have an old spark between them as Kevin helps restore Herbie and encourages Maggie to return to race. The biggest turning point comes when famous NASCAR driver Trip Murphy, played by Matt Dillon, appears at a race event to promote his new video game. Maggie ends up challenging him in a street race and surprisingly defeats him, turning herself into a national sensation and putting her on the path toward becoming a NASCAR contender. However, she has to keep her racing identity hidden from her father. To do that, she creates a fake persona named Max and wears a helmet with a tinted visor. Somehow, the movie expects us to believe that only the audience can see through it because we believe in Maggie's dream. Later, her friend Charisma, played by Jill Ritchie, suddenly calls Maggie's disguise. Pulling a racer. Breckin Meyer plays Maggie's brother Ray Jr., who is allowed to compete on the family's racing team despite everyone knowing that Maggie is the more talented driver. Jimmy Simpson plays one of Trip's assistants, and in his biggest scene, he attempts to destroy Herbie by entering him into a demolition derby. I also noticed Scoot McNairy appearing briefly in the film, and I was impressed that I recognized him because his face is barely shown. Cheryl Hines plays what seems to be the team's sponsor, while also taking on a slightly motherly role toward Maggie. Her character becomes especially important because she owns a car that Herbie is not only mechanically compatible with but also seems romantically interested in. There are a few parts of the story that left me with questions. First, Maggie takes a surprisingly long time to realize that Herbie is more than just a car. The movie never clearly explains when she moves from simply believing he is special to actually treating him like a living, thinking being. Second, the emotional heart of the story is Maggie proving herself as a driver despite her father's overprotectiveness and the sexism surrounding racing. But the movie never fully explains how much control Maggie actually has over Herbie. If Herbie is making his own decisions, does Maggie truly know whether she is still a great driver? The film seems to suggest there is some kind of emotional or telepathic connection between them that allows her to drive through him. Maggie is introduced as someone who arrives late to graduation on a skateboard, and later, when Herbie slides across a guardrail, she jokes that she wishes she had been on her skateboard so she could grind across it. These moments connect her natural sense of adventure with Herbie's own rebellious personality. Visually, the film has an interesting style. Whenever it cuts to cars, stunts and racing footage, the movie begins to resemble the classic Herbie films. It almost feels like the second unit may have used different film stock, creating a noticeable change in texture and style. Whether that was intentional or not is unclear. The director of photography was Greg Gardner, known for Suture, while the second unit cinematographer and camera operator was Jack Hatkin, who worked on films such as A Nightmare on Elm Street 1-2. The Hidden, and Cherry 2000. A large amount of footage appears to have been filmed at an actual NASCAR track, giving the racing scenes an authentic feel. One of the stand-up moments is the dramatic slow-motion sequence where Mark Mothersbaugh's powerful score builds as the crew rolls Herbie into position and Maggie walks behind him with complete confidence. The film also makes creative use of split-screen wipes, letterboxing, and Herbie's famous red, white, and blue racing stripes. These retro visual elements are especially effective during the opening credits, which feature a montage of classic Herbie films along with fake newspaper articles describing his racing victories and celebrity lifestyle. My favorite fake headline is the one about Herbie partying at Club 54. Another article shows him spending time with Kit from Knight Rider, which raises some funny questions. Does this movie take place in a world where the Knight Industries 2000 actually exists? If so, is Kit alive too? Or is Herbie just strangely hanging out with a normal car? The film never answers these questions. I suspect the opening sequence may have been added later because it feels disconnected from the rest of the movie. I even found myself wishing there was a scene where Maggie visits the library and discovers those old newspaper articles from the montage on microfilm. Interestingly, throughout the entire movie, almost nobody remembers that Herbie was once famous. Most characters don't even realize he is anything more than an ordinary car. Although the movie carries a G rating, it still contains plenty of playful adult humor and innuendo. One visual joke makes it appear as if a young couple is getting intimate inside the car, followed by a comedic sound effect confirming that Herbie's moving antennas meant is a suggestive joke. It is the kind of humor that probably surprised many families who expected a completely innocent Disney racing movie. But she's written and directed for TV, including episodes of The L Word, Hung, A True Blood, and the upcoming season of Wednesday. Come to think of it, Goff and Miller created Wednesday. They must have liked working with her. Related information, an artifact of the baby boom era. Herbie, aka the love bug. Ask your parents if you're 20 or below. Also fallen on hard times. Spunky Maggie and Keaton, Lindsay Lohan. You can tell as she's hip, she's still skateboarding. And her father, Michael Keaton, SAC agent, now saves the VW Beetle from the junkyard since she'll need a set of wheels after her father sets her up with a job in the city. Anyway, Herbie is no ordinary runaround. He's a magic car, no explanation given nor offered, with a mind of his own, who kicks the snot out of people he doesn't like with his doors and boot. Herbie and Maggie become friends and realize that anything is possible, even winning the big race. In spite of her off-screen antics, Lohan remains the darling of Disney remakes, with her on-screen innocence and charm being an enjoyable diversion among the corn and cheese. The infinitely superior The Parent Trap and Marvelous Freaky Fridays show up fully loaded for what it is. A lowest common denominator expensive car wreck. Matt Dillon is a gifted actor who sells himself short with a professional turn as an engagingly nasty NASCAR race champion, and Keaton doesn't play to his strength. He hardly plays at all, while Justina Tong climbs another rung on his career ladder as Maggie's would-be boyfriend. Looking on from afar, the real problem with Herbie's return to the screen is its lack of pace. Either there's lots of a reasonable plot on the cutting room floor to which there's reference in the finished film, or there wasn't enough cut out to give narrative thrust. It feels terribly long at 100 minutes, during which time every possible product placement is aired. A plot strand that left me scratching my head is when we are told that Maggie used to be one of the best street racers around a longer time ago. She graduates high school at the beginning of the film, so either she's been driving without a license or the scriptwriters weren't paying attention. Fully loaded as blandly inoffensive children's entertainment that lacks creativity. Yet, it's crammed with nostalgia and Kit. The credits sequence alone should convince you of this, and you are left wondering just for whom it was made. Chicken-hearted sentimentalists, the easily pleased, or their very young children. Herbie, the car that won't die. I suppose there are worse ways to spend a summer evening than in the company of this cast and the R2-D2-like automobile. But hasn't the day of Herbie come and gone? The Love Bug first made its appearance in the 1968 film Herbie the Love Bug, a low-budget, low-concepted Disney film starring Dean Jones. When the movie struck box office gold, a sequel was born. Although it took a movie Herbie Rides Again 6 years to reach theaters. 1977 and 1980 saw more Herbie movies than there was a short. Indeed, There are times when the entire film resembles one of the NASCAR cars and drivers that we see throughout, where every single square inch of theater surface is plastered with brand name labels. You wonder if Angela Robinson is being slightly subversive, or if the film simply fails to appreciate the irony when, despite this product placement saturation throughout the story, Matt Dillon's villain is someone who is surrounded by corporate sponsorship, while the film itself is rooting for the underdog family that is struggling to find any at all. Herbie, the car that won't die. I suppose there are worse ways to spend a summer evening than in the company of this cast and the R2-D2A-like automobile. But hasn't the day of Herbie come and gone? The love bug first made its appearance in the 1968 film Herbie the Love Bug, a low-budget, low-concept Disney film starring Dean Jones. When the movie struck box office gold, a sequel was born, although it took that movie Herbie Rides Again 6 years to reach theaters. 1977 and 1980 saw two more Herbie movies. Then there was a short-lived TV series in 1982, Still Not Dead. The VW with more live than a cat returned for a 1997 TV movie. Now, 8 years later, Disney has dusted off the car once more and paired it with preteen draw Lindsay Lohan for a film that's as much a remake as it is a continuation of the legend. Casting a note: Dean Jones, who appeared in all of the previous incarnations of Herbie, except Herbie Rides Again, is nowhere to be found in this movie. It would have been a classy move to give him a cameo, although I'm not sure how many members of the audience would have recognized him. The story is straightforward. Also one would expect from a movie aimed at the pre-puberty crowd. It's part girl power inspiration and part sports movie, and anyone who doesn't know beforehand how the big race is going to turn out should be ashamed of himself or herself. That's one annoying thing about films like this that close with obligatory closing games / races / matches / etc. There's no suspense. It's anticlimactic since we know what the result has to be. There's no mystery, and only the most skilled director can invest this event with energy. Angela Robinson is not up to the task. The lengthy next championship NASCAR race that represents Herbie fully loaded's final lap is plotting. It's duller than watching a crash-free car race and not television. During the opening credits, we are given a brief recap of the rise and fall of Herbie over the years. The story picks up with the Bug's arrival on a Crazy Dave's scrap and salvage where the crusher awaits. However, just as Herbie is about to be pancaked, it catches the attention of Maggie Keaton, Lindsay Lohan, who buys the car for $75. This represents a graduation present from her father, Ray, Michael Keaton, who proudly announces that his daughter was the first one in the family to earn a college diploma. But the Keaton have racing in their blood. Ray and his father were famous drivers, and Maggie's brother is trying to qualify for the big race, and Maggie is no exception. Since being injured in a crash several years ago, Maggie has avoided getting behind the wheel, but when she meets Herbie, things change. The VW has a mind of its own, and it forces Maggie to challenge a top NASCAR driver Trip Murphy, Matt Dillon, to a street race. When Herbie and Maggie win, Trip becomes determined to arrange a rematch and claim victory at all costs. Meanwhile, Maggie must lie to Ray about racing again since her father has forbidden her to become involved in any kind of competitive driving. Herbie Fully Loaded is about the relationship between Maggie and her dad. A girl finding her own way and earning her father's respect in the process, and about the relationship between a girl and her best friend, which happens to be a car. There's also a little romance thrown in with just along playing Maggie's love interest. But this is insubstantial enough to be disregarded, and considering that the writers are worse than George Lucas at conceiving a love story, ignoring it is the best approach. It's a classic underdog overcome story with Maggie and Herbie functioning as the unlikeliest of fat champions. Together they find victory while apart they face defeat. Moving on to the review. Herbie Fully Loaded is a 2005 American sports comedy film directed by Angela Robinson from a screenplay by Thomas Lennon, Roberta Bengurant, and Smallville co-creators Alfred Gough and Miles Miller. The film is the sixth and final installment in the Herbie film series following the television film The Love Bug, 1997, in the first theatrical film since Herbie Goes Bananas, 1980. It serves as a direct sequel to the previous films. The film stars Lindsay Lohan, Justin Long, Brian Meyer, Matt Dillon, and Michael Keaton. It features cameo appearances by many NASCAR drivers, including Jeff Gordon, Jimmy Johnson, Tony Stewart, and Dale Jarrett. Herbie Fully Loaded had its premiere at the Las Vegas Motor Speedway on May 10, 2005 and was released in the United States on June 24, 2005 by Buena Vista Pictures Distribution. The film received mixed reviews from critics and audiences, but positive reception from fans of the Herbie franchise. The film was a box office success, grossing $144.1 million against a budget of $50 million. Herbie, a Volkswagen Beetle with a mind of his own, is decommissioned and towed to a junkyard after losing several races and losing his owner, Jim Douglas. Elsewhere, Maggie Payton, the youngest member of the Payton racing clan, graduates from college and is preparing to take up an internship with the ESPN in New York. Her father, Ray Payton, a senior, takes her to the junkyard to buy her a car as a present, and she chooses Herbie after he wriggles free of a crane, landing on top of the car she originally selected. Herbie then takes Maggie to her mechanic friend Kevin, who agrees to take them to a car show to buy parts. Herbie tricks Maggie into disguising herself in a racing suit and helmet and challenging NASCAR champion Trip Murphy to an impromptu race, which Herbie wins by a hair. Kevin happily suggests that Maggie should race full-time, but Ray Sr. is concerned, having forbidden Maggie to race due to a street racing accident years ago. Trip becomes obsessed with Herbie and the mysterious driver, and organizes a local racing competition to lure Herbie back for a rematch. Maggie and Kevin enter the event with Herbie being given a new all-street racer look and new parts. Herbie and Maggie easily defeat the other competitors and qualify for the final match with Trip. But when Trip talks Maggie into racing for pink slips, Herbie's jealousy over Maggie's desire to win Trip's stock car causes him and Maggie to lose the race. Maggie is publicly embarrassed. Herbie is towed away and both Kevin and Ray Sr. express their disappointment with Maggie over her respective actions. Encouraged by her friend Charisma, Maggie decides to race professionally. She tries to buy Herbie back from Trip, but finds that he has entered Herbie in a demolition derby. Desperate to save Herbie from destruction, Maggie rushes to the arena, runs onto the field while Herbie is in progress, and pleads with Herbie to forgive her. After he saves her from being crushed by a monster truck, the two manage to escape the arena and win the derby. They return to Kevin's workshop where the badly damaged Herbie collapses from exhaustion. Meanwhile, the Payton racing team may have to forfeit an upcoming NASCAR Next Cup Series race due to financial trouble as two crashes by Ray Payton Jr. The team's driver and Maggie's brother, Ray Sr. still refuses to let Maggie drive for the team, but Ray Jr. decides on his own that she will take his place and sends the Team Payton crew to help her. And Kevin rebuild Herbie into a NASCAR racer. At the racetrack, Maggie and Herbie have a heart-to-heart conversation while Trip ominously warns Maggie that the race will be dangerous. Herbie and Maggie start the race slowly, but they eventually catch up and begin passing the other cars before Maggie makes her first pit stop. Meanwhile, Ray Sr., who has been watching the race at home, decides to join the team to act as Maggie's crew chief. Back on track, Herbie is soon boxed in by some other cars, but escapes by driving directly over Tony Stewart's car, damaging Herbie's oil system. Maggie makes another pit stop and the team hurriedly extracts a replacement part from the yellow new Beetle, which Herbie has been eyeing amorously throughout the film, owned by Sally, one of Team Peyton's few remaining sponsors. Though the jerry-rigged oil system is fragile, with the last few laps remaining, Maggie and Herbie catch up to Drip. Bent on defeating Herbie once and for all, tries to force Maggie into the track wall when she tries to pass him, but crashes himself once she slams on the brake during his next attempt, resulting in him hitting Jeff Gordon and flipping onto his roof. Herbie passes Drip's car, now upside down on the track, by climbing onto the catch fencing. After landing back on the track, Maggie and Herbie take the checkered flag and Maggie becomes the next Peyton to win a NASCAR race. Maggie is congratulated by her father and brother and Drip, who I still believe to be insane when he tries to convince others that Herbie is sentient, is driven away in ambulance as Maggie and Kevin kiss. The film ends with Rhea speaking with Herbie and Sally's new Beetle, which is revealed to be sentient as well, telling them not to stay out too long on their date as Herbie and Maggie have another race coming up. In their 2011 screenwriting How to Book Writing Movies for Fun and Profit to Robert Bengart and Thomas Lennon, two of the film's co-writers, explained their original starting idea for the Herbie remake. We are both very big fans of the old The Love Bug movies, but the old Herbie movies are corny in a way you can't get away with today. We needed to put Herbie in a much more real world, not some dopey, illogical kids movie world with characters like the crotchety old Jean-Claude Van twirling his mustache and swearing, "I'm going to get that little league car if it's the last thing I ever do." Kids hate that kind of stupidness as much as grown-ups do. We set it in a very realistically portrayed world of San Fernando Valley street racing, a Macoa world where an old beat-up car would get a laugh at them be totally respected when it won some races. They further elucidated on the experience. We turned Ida in the first draft and the movie was greenlit. They were that confident of had the movie off the first draft. Here's where it gets interesting. Horrible. We were no longer dealing directly with the then Disney president Bob Iger. We were now dealing with a studio executive under the president. This executive was not in the room when we sold the pitch. This executive was not there when I gave us notes on the script. This executive had no agenda. This exec wasn't making a power play. This executive just genuinely didn't understand the movie and what I had liked about it. Principal of photography began on August 2, 2004 in Los Angeles and wrapped up later that same November. During the 2005 NASCAR NXL Cup Series season, drivers Dally Jarrett and Scott Riggs ran special paint schemes to promote the film. The film was reported to include heavy use of product placement. For example, Maggie Peyton is a former reporter for ESPN, owned by Disney, turned NASCAR driver. A huge billboard for Mid-America Motorworks, an aftermarket parts supplier for classic Volkswagens and other vehicles, is seen in the background of the scene where Murphy attempts to sabotage Herbie. In addition, a Volkswagen provided a Volkswagen Touareg and a Volkswagen New Beetle for use in certain scenes. General Motors also provided the 2005 Chevrolet Corvette and the 2005 Pontiac GTO for use in race scenes as well. Various race cars in the next Adele Cup Series appear during the razzia at the end with action sequences being filmed during the 2004 Target House 300A Busch Series race at California Speedway on September 4, 2004 and the 2004 Popa Secret 500 Cup Series race also at California Speedway on September 5. 2004. Dale Earnhardt Jr.'s number 8 car is seen briefly, but it has all the Budweiser logos removed and replaced it with his signature to avoid advertising alcohol in the children's film. In addition, billboards can be seen in straightaway scenes, some with the Nextel logo on them. Also, in the scene where Maggie pretends to drive a stock car in the junkyard, Dominic Tortos, a 1970 Dodge Charger from the Fast and the Furious, can be seen among the cars. Keaton from the classic Knight Rider series also makes a cameo in the newspaper during the opening sequence. Citation needed. ABC Family aired the making of feature readout titled Herbie Fully Loaded and Retold hosted by Lohan on June 21, 2005 to promote the film release. In its opening weekend, the film grossed $12.79,221 and $3.5221 theaters in the United States and Canada, ranking number 4 at the box office. By the end of its run, Herbie Fully Loaded grossed $66,23,816 domestically and $78,123,00 internationally, totaling $144,146,816 worldwide. On Rotten Tomatoes, the film has an approval rating of 40% based on 141 reviews with an average rating of 5.3. The site's critics' consensus states that Herbie Fully Loaded is a decent kids' movie that is pretty undemanding for adult viewers. The film, along with Herbie Goes Bananas, which also scored a 40% A rating, is the lowest rated entry in the franchise. On Metacritic, it has a weighted average score of 47 out of 100 A based on 31 critics indicating mixed or average reviews. Audiences surveyed by A CinemaScore gave the film an average grade and an A+ to F scale. Roger Ebert gave the film a 2 out of 4 stars, A, stating, "The movie is pretty cornball. Little kids would probably enjoy it, but then their older brothers and sisters will be rolling their eyes, and their parents will be using their iPods." A. William Thomas of Empire gave the film a 2 out of 5 stars and said, "Every bit as good and bad as Herbie Goes Bananas, but the Love Bug deserves a better performances." A review of Herbie Fully Loaded film. Herbie the Love Bug sports a brand new NASCAR look in Herbie Fully Loaded, one of the most wholesome, fun-friendly family movies this summer. Starring Lindsay Lohan and Michael Keaton, Herbie is reached to zoom into the imaginations of children of all ages. Miss Lohan plays a Maggie Payton, a college graduate bound for a sports journalism career in New York City. A third-generation member of a legendary NASCAR family, Maggie has racing in her blood. Her overprotective father, Ray, Michael Keaton, however, has forbidden her to do any racing. Only a day, Maggie rescues Herbie from an angry junkyard owner. Her father figures Maggie's not going to do any racing in an old 1963 Volkswagen, but he doesn't know Herbie like we know Herbie. Maggie assume trading racing challenges with the conceded NASCAR champion Trip Murphy, played by Matt Dillon. Maggie learns that Herbie has plenty of charms to help her shift the course of her life, not to mention the sagging racing fortunes of her famous family. Herbie Fully Loaded is a good family entertainment. It's got plenty of laughs under the hood to keep its pistons pumping. The racy car scenes are exciting and had the audience cheering at the preview. Movie Guide registered attended. Michaela Keaton warmly plays a real-life NASCAR dad, and Lindsay Lohan retains her crown as the most delightful princess of the family movie genre. Despite a few light exclamatory profanities and some lying, the movie teaches positive values. It will be loads of fun for parents and their children to see Herbie in action on Seymour. Herbie's on the road again. It's a brand new century for the famous 1963 Volkswagen Beetle, and after vanishing into the depths of a junkyard for a spell, he's ready for another raunchy ride. The fourth Herbie sequel, Fully Loaded, chronicles the little car with love in his eyes and gold in his heart landing in the hands of tomboy Maggie and Keaton. She's the youngest in a family of NASCAR racers, and though her grandfather earned accolades in the sport, her father and brother face a dwindling careers. Now the family name is about to go under. Maggie is the first in her family to graduate from a college. She has a job with the SPN lined up and seems driven toward a brighter future. Among her chief goals is gaining her father's approval. And while it's rough going for a while, Dad gets behind her when she needs him most. Maggie has a strong affection for Herbie. "We're a team. I need you." And although she's very competitive, she's willing to lose a race because it puts Herbie in danger. He has an oil leak. When he faces a destruction at a demolition derby, she saves his life a favor. He returns by scooping her up when a giant monster truck threatens to run her down. Before their final race, Maggie tells Herbie, in the interest of honesty, that she owns a wrecked car. Maggie jokes that she's going to have Herbie exorcised. Similarly, famed racer Trip Murphy says that the car is possessed. When Maggie first finds Herbie in the junkyard, the glove box falls open, revealing a note that reads, "Please take care of Herbie. Whatever your problem, he will help you find the answer." Maggie responds, a fortune cookie on wheels." Very subtle innuendo shadows a few conversations. Maggie sometimes shows off her berry midriff and wears tight shirts and short skirts, but her actions are refreshingly ladylike when she changes clothes in Herbie's backseat before an impromptu race. She asks Kevin, her love interest, to stand guard, but no peeking. Kevin doesn't obey. He jumps at the chance to steal a look at Maggie changing. Herbie won't let him. At a drive-in movie, Kevin tries to put his arm around Maggie. Even though we know she likes Kevin, she shows restraint by removing his arm from her shoulder. Later, the two share a brief kiss, though Maggie evades physical romance. Herbie ain't afraid of public displays of affection for the love of his life. A shiny new Beetle, bright yellow with a black bra. His windows get steamy and his antenna quivers as he admires her. Maggie tells Herbie, "She's too young for you." Trip Murphy tells his assistant to do a better job of filtering his interaction with female fans when the women give you numbers. "Get pictures this time. I do enough charity work." Like previous Herbie installments, this movie is full of humorous physical comedy antics that usually come in reaction to people making fun of Herbie. Characters so habitually get bonked on the head and slam into virtually everything. No only is badly injured on screen, but some of the pratfalls would have quite a different result in real life. For instance, when Trip tries to make some mechanical changes to Herbie, the Buick slams his head with his hood, shocks him, and squirts him with fluid. He ejects a man from his driver's seat, sending him high into the stands at Theatre Herbie and drags another character through the dirt with a chain attached to his bumper. Several high-speed crashes are shown. None are undiagraphic. At the Herbie, a giant monster truck painted to literally look monstrous chases Herbie, who gets dented, scraped, and smashed. Maggie runs into the arena and is nearly struck several times as she tries to rescue him. In their final face-off, Trip tries to slam his car into Herbie and loses control. He's taken away in an ambulance. "God and oh my God" are used a handful of times. Jesus said once. Mild put-downs include a jerk. Crap gets tossed around a few times. Throughout the movie, Maggie's father forbids her from racing. She ignores him and ultimately lies, claiming a friend is the one behind the wheel during Herbie's races. In the end, though, Maggie apologizes to her father and admits her dishonesty has cost her the respect of those she loves. The film makes references to Maggie being a former street racer. At one point, she and Herbie take on Trip Murphy outside the track. While it's never mentioned, street racing is illegal. Maggie also makes a side bet during one of her races against Drip, putting Herbie's pink sleeper on the line. Viagra ads are featured in all stock car, but interestingly enough, filmmakers avoided blasting moviegoers with beer ads, which are commonly seen at real-life racing events. Younger children may be frightened when Maggie and Kevin watch a movie depicting a skeleton chasing a girl. The Fast and the Furious. This is not in an effort to update and modernize Herbie. It would have been easy for filmmakers to make him so hip that he lost his quaint charm and his manners. Thankfully, Thea didn't. Fully Loaded maintains both the spirit and integrity of the original story, making this chapter in the Herbie narrative a welcome addition. Herbie might get tricked out, but he doesn't get tripped up. Herbie Fully Loaded is the sixth motion picture in Walt Disney's Herbie IP franchise saga. Following The Love Bug, 1968, Herbie Rides Again, 1974, Herbie Goes to Monte Carlo, 1977, Herbie Goes Bananas, 1980, and Disney's The Love Bug, 1997. It's a sequel, not a reboot like Batman Begins, because the opening credits feature clips from some of those movies as backstory. The story proper starts like a normal Herbie movie with the lovable anthropomorphic but not talking a Volkswagen Beetle with the number 53 in his side causing trouble at the junkyard that he's being dumped off in. Ray Payton, Sr., Michael Keaton, first daughter, leader of the Bass Pro Shop NASCAR team, brings his daughter Maggie Lindsay Lohan a year after Mean Girls are there to buy a fixer-upper as a college graduation gift. She ends up owning and restoring Herbie due to wacky Herbie mischief. This version of Herbie can blink his headlights, curve his bumper into a smile, rock back and forth when he's excited, and other things that no humans seem to notice. Some of his movement might be done mechanically, but mostly it appears to be computer narrated. I thought of it also being like in Babe how they often animate the mouth of real animals. The visual effects are fine by the standards of 2005. Obviously fake looking now, but so are the mad effects in the original Herbie movies. As the opening credits reminded us, the modern twist is that Ida takes place in the world of NASCAR with tons of cameos by what are clearly famous drivers and or their cars and also the Fast and the Furious style street racing. Well, there is no full-on parody of the type of races they have in the Fast movies, but there's a competition very reminiscent of Russia Warzing, maybe the highlight of the movie. A version of that shot the earlier ones do where the camera goes inside the car and flies around a CG engine as Ida kicks in, but this isn't a muscle car. It's Herbie the Love Bug and the engine is animated all bendy like a cartoon. Oh, and by the way, the second unit director, stunt coordinator is the legendary Spiro Rosatos, who later did a Fast 5, 6, 7, Fate 9, and X, as well as Maniac 1, Colombian Pesa 2, and 3, and come to think of it, it's with Fast 5 that the Fasts catch up to the cartoon physics he was doing with Herbie. Another connection is that according to this very detailed online source, the car that Maggie sits in the junkyard is Dom's actual Charger stunt car tour from the first film, the one that got smashed at the end. At this point, Thea had only made the Fast and the Furious and Too Fast Too Furious, which does not have Dom or his car in it, so there was no reason to believe it would be needed again. Similar to the kid in the recent Karate Kid Legends and his mom not letting him fight, Maggie is forbidden from racing ever since she crashed her car into a tree and was hospitalized. She accepted her fate, went off and got a college degree and an internship at ESPN, but now she's in this magic car. It non-consensually takes her on a rip-roaring joyride and suddenly she's getting the itch again. Also, Herbie makes her almost run over local mechanic Kevin, Justin Long, Jeepers, Creepers, A rekindling old crushes. They seem to have a head on each other as he volunteers to help her fix up Herbie and then gets Harold back into racing. The real catalyst is the famous NASCAR trip. Murphy, Matt Dillon, Wild Things, shows up at the race to promote his new video game, and she ends up defeating him in a street race, becoming a national story, and turning her into a NASCAR contender. Though, she has to hide it from her daughter by pretending to be a mysterious man named Max and wearing a helmet with a tinted visor that I guess only we can see through because we believe in her enough or whatever. Later, her friend Charisma, Kid Rock's sister Jill Ritchie, a best of the best for Without Warning, calls that pulling a Racer X. Brina Meyer, following Garfield and Blast, plays Maggie's brother, Ray Jr., also allowed to drive on the Bass Pro Shop team, even though everybody knows he's not as good as her. Jimmy Simpson, a loser, plays a flunky of trips, who in his biggest scene tries to destroy Herbie by entering him in a demolition derby. Somehow, I notice Scoot McNary in the crew, too. I was impressed with myself for being right because they barely show his face. Ex-wife of Larry David, real-life wife of a fascist roadkill devouring disease-monger Cheryl Hines plays I guess the sponsor of the team who also sometimes is hanging around like a mother figure but mainly is important because she owns a car that Herbie is both mechanically and romantically compatible with. There are a couple story points that confuse me a little. 1. It takes Maggie a while to realize that Herbie is more than a car, but I didn't notice why when she went from thinking there was something magical about him to actually speaking to him as a fellow sentient being. 2. The emotional center of the story is about Maggie trying to prove herself as a driver despite her dad's overprotectiveness and the sports sexism. But it's unclear how much control she has over Herbie, if any. So, does she even know if she's still a good driver? I guess there's an implication that there's some telepathic connection that maybe counts as her driving. She's introduced showing up late to graduation on a skateboard. And later when Herbie slides across a guardrail, she says she was wishing she was on her skateboard so she could grind it. The look of the film is interesting because often when it cuts to car stunt footage, it starts looking more like the old Herbie movies. It seemed to me the second unit was using a different film stock. If so, I wonder whether it was intended to be noticeable or not. For the record, the director of photography is Greg Gardner, a suture, and the second unit D.P/camera operator is Jack Hatkin, who was the cinematographer of A Nightmare on Elm Street 1 and 2. The Hidden Cherry 2000 and more. They seem to have shot a whole lot of footage at a real NASCAR track, and there's a totally deadpan, the right stuff type slow-mo shot where Mark Mother's boss score gets all majestic as the crew rolls Herbie and Maggie walks in behind them looking like a badass. I also like the use of split-screen wipes and letterboxing with Herbie's red, white, and blue racing stripe. Those type of retro graphics are especially used in the fun opening credit sequence, a montage of previous Herbie movies, and fake newspaper articles about his sports achievements and celebrity lifestyle. My favorite is the one about 53 partying at Club 54. There's also one about him hanging out with Kid, which begs the questions, does this take place in a world where Night Industries 2000 is real? Or is he hanging out with the car from the fictional show Knight Rider? And if so, is that car alive? Or is he just kind of a weird creep hanging out with an inanimate object? I do not know the answers. I suspect this opening was a late edition because it doesn't feed with the rest of the movie. I had my fingers crossed for a scene where Maggie goes to the library and finds the articles from that montage on microfiche. At no point during the movie does any remember that Herbie used to be famous and most people don't even notice has anything but a normal car. Although it's G-rated, there is a bunch of innuendo, including a visual gag where it looks like the young couple are going at it inside the car, and of course, a bonus sound effect to confirm that Herbie's radio antenna is his boner. General audiences must have been so scandalized. I have to admit that the joke of Herbie being turned on by seeing a bright yellow modern VW bug parked nearby made me laugh and seemed funnier the more you considered the likelihood that no other cars are alive and he still wants to hump them. There are a weird number of similarities to Bumblebee. Similarly aged heroin fixing up a junker while finding its secretly magic soundtrack of 80s hits plus one song sung by the lead actress' sweet and unthreatening crush. In other ways, they're very different, though, and Bumblebee is to me much more effective, but it also has the advantage of him turning into a robot. I would consider Herbie Fully Loaded to be a very good movie, though there are some laughs. Much of the humor barely counts as jokes. It's like, oh Herbie has sprayed oil on a guy, or, Jess, Maggie Dillon is so mad. The story is formulaic in an acceptable way, but not executed well enough to actually be moving. Still, I don't know. I didn't mind the movie. I sort of got into it because Ida looks pretty good, and though Dillon is clearly acting in a comedy, Lohan, Keaton, and Long all approach their characters with complete sincerity. There's a certain low-key charm to it, taking something they know is dated and treating it with a straight face. Any attempt to extreme it up is part of the joke. This is definitely way better than some of the kids' movies I did in my last summer retrospective, especially 3 Ninjas Kickback. The story is credited to the writing team of Thomas Lennon and Robert Bengerant, The Pacifier, and Mark Pors, The Country Bears, screenplay by Alan Garnt and the team of Alfred Groff and Miles Miller. Lethal Weapon 4 Spider-Man 2. I actually started thinking it was going to be directed by Adam Reed, Bring It On, but that was the 1997 made for the Disney Channel sequel starring Bruce Campbell. The director of this one is Angela Robinson, who previously directed D. EBS which Simpson and McNary were all in. I've never seen it, but it has enough of a cult that it's playing at my neighborhood theater this month. For whatever it's worth, Robinson might be the first black lesbian director of a Disney movie. Not sure, but it's cooler that we've already had 3 movies directed by women in this summer. The Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants, Lords of Dogtown, and this. Robinson has only directed 1 feature film since this. Professor Marston and the Wonder Woman, 2017, but she's written and directed for TV, including episodes of The L Word, Hung, True Blood, and the upcoming season of Wednesday. Come to think of it, Goff and Miller created Wednesday. They must have liked working with her. Related information, an artifact of the baby boom era. Herbie, aka the love bug. Ask your parents if you're 20 or below. Also fallen on hard times. Spunky Maggie and Keaton, Lindsay Lohan. You can tell her she's hip, she's still skateboarding. And her father, Michael Keaton, Saka your agent, now saves the VW Beetle from the junkyard since she'll need a set of wheels after her father sets her up with a job in the city. Anyway, Herbie is no ordinary runaround. He's a magic car, no explanation given nor offered, with a mind of his own, who kicks the snot out of people he doesn't like with his doors and boot. Herbie and Maggie become friends and realize that anything is possible, even winning the big race. In spite of her off-screen antics, Lohan remains the darling of Disney remakes. With her on-screen innocence and charm being an enjoyable diversion among the corn and cheese. The infinitely superior The Parent Trap and Marvelous Freaky Friday show up fully loaded for what it is. A lowest common denominator expensive car wreck. Matt Dillon is a gifted actor who sells himself short with a professional turn as an engagingly nasty NASCAR race champion, and Keaton doesn't play to his strength. He hardly plays at all, while Justin Dillon climbs another rung on his career ladder as Maggie's would-be boyfriend looking on from afar. The real problem with Herbie's return to the screen is its lack of pace. Either there's lots of a reasonable plot on the cutting room floor to which there's reference in the finished film, or there wasn't enough cut out to give narrative thrust. Ida feels terribly long at 100 minutes, during which time every possible product placement is aired. A plot strand that left me scratching my head is when we are told that Maggie used to be one of the best street racers around a longer time ago. She graduates high school at the beginning of the film, so either she's been driving without a license or the scriptwriters weren't paying attention. Fully Loaded is blandly inoffensive children's entertainment that lacks creativity. Yet, it is crammed with nostalgia and ticket. The credit sequence alone should convince you of this, and you are left wondering just for whom it was made. Chicken-hearted sentimentalists, the easily pleased, or their very young children. Herbie, the car that won't die. I suppose there are worse ways to spend a summer evening than in the company of this cast and the R2-D2-like automobile. But hasn't the day of Herbie come and gone? The love bug first made its appearance in the 1968 film Herbie the Love Bug, a low-budget, low-concepted Disney film starring Dean Jones. When the movie struck box office gold, a sequel was born. Although it took that movie Herbie Rides Again 6 years to reach theaters. 1977 and 1980 saw more Herbie movies. Then there was a short-lived TV series in 1982, Still Not Dead. The VW with more live than a cat returned for a 1997 TV movie. Now 8 years later, Disney has dusted off the car once more and paired it with a preteen draw Lindsay Lohan for a film that's as much a remake as it is a continuation of the legend. Casting a note: Dean Jones, who appeared in all of the previous incarnations of Herbie, except Herbie Rides Again, is nowhere to be found in this movie. It would have been a classy move to give him a cameo, although I'm not sure how many members of the audience would have recognized him. The story is straightforward. Also one would expect from a movie aimed at the pre-puberty crowd. It's part girl power inspiration and part sports movie. And anyone who doesn't know beforehand how the big race is going to turn out and should be ashamed of himself or herself. That's one annoying thing about films like this that close with obligatory closing games / races / matches / etc. There's no suspense. It's anticlimactic since we know what the result has to be. There's no mystery and only the most skilled director can invest this event with energy. Angela Robinson is not up to the task. The lengthy next championship NASCAR race that represents Herbie Fully Loaded's final lap is plotting. It's duller than watching a crash-free car race and not television. During the opening credits, we are given a brief recap of the rise and fall of Herbie over the years. The story picks up with the Bug's arrival on a Crazy Dave's scrap and salvage where the Crusher awaits. However, just as Herbie is about to be pancaked, it catches the attention of Maggie Payton, Lindsay Lohan, who buys the car for $75. This represents a graduation present from her father, Michael Keaton, who proudly announces that his daughter Isa, the first one in the family to earn a college diploma. But the tin have racing in their blood. And his father were famous drivers, and Maggie's brother is trying to qualify for the big race, and Maggie is no exception. Since being injured in a crash several years ago, Maggie has avoided getting behind the wheel, but when she meets Herbie, things change. The VW has a mind of its own, and it forces Maggie to challenge a top NASCAR driver Trip Murphy, Dillon, to a street race. When Herbie and Maggie win, Trip becomes determined to arrange a rematch and claim victory at all costs. Meanwhile, Maggie must lie to Ray about racing again since her father has forbidden her to become involved in any kind of competitive driving. Herbie Fully Loaded is about the relationship between Maggie and her dad. A girl finding her own way and earning her father's respect in the process, and about the relationship between a girl and her best friend. which happens to be a car. There's also a little romance thrown in with Justin Long playing a Maggie's love interest, but this is insubstantial enough to be disregarded, and considering that the writers area worse than George Lucas at conceiving a love story, ignoring it is the best approach. It's a classic underdog overcome story with Maggie and Herbie functioning as the unlikeliest Tofa champions. Together they find victory while apart they face defeat. There's nothing new to be found here. Although director Robinson's approach is workmanlike, if not inspired, the movie is pleasant but unspectacular, and odd at times it borders on being too cute. The car is the source of most of the laughs as it winks its headlights, smiles using its front bumper, and uses its trunk to conk Mellors on the head. There's an amusing love scene in which Herbie notices a newer, sexy VW, the windshield fogs up, and the antenna snaps to attention. This is one of the few instances in which the movie throws in a moment for the grown UPS. As bright a starlet as she may be, Lohan ends up playing second fiddle to the car. The actress was Moria of a standout in Mean Girls, but it's tough to call this a step back because the screenplay doesn't give her a lot to work with. This isn't a challenging role, and she does as much with it as any actress her age could. Internet rumors indicate that the CGI artist Sadia Disney digitally reduced her breast size to prevent her assets from becoming a distraction. Either this is untrue, Ida was done sparingly, or ample would be an understated description. Meanwhile, Michael Keaton sleepwalks through a performance that doesn't require more than that he look fatherly. Matt Dillon invests his bad guy with some energy, but it's still a throwaway part. Green and Meyer playing Maggie's brother and Justin Long are forgettable. Also family films go, Herbie, fully loaded, Isa adequate fare. Children will probably enjoy it, and most parents will be able to tolerate it. It's a breezy affair that doesn't overstay its welcome, and there are plenty of 80s songs on the lively soundtrack. I suppose Herbie has some nostalgic appeal, but the main draw will be to a new generation. It remains to be seen whether Herbie fully loaded gives the car another lease on life or finally sends it to the cinematic junkyard. Few information. Herbie fully loaded film. Working from script accredited to small platoon of scribes and based on characters created by Gordon Buford. Elmer Angela Robinson smoothly shifts gears from her coming out comedy. E.B. Dill asks for a different take on our girl power. Title sequence amusingly quotes earlier Herbie picks to accompaniment of apt Beach Boy tune Get Ya Back sounding a 70s nostalgic note that occasionally reprises in split-screen or visuals musical cues and some deliberately low-tech special effects but characterization of thoroughly modern Maggie. Peyton Lohan goes a long way toward giving familiar material a contempo spin. Newly graduated from a college, Maggie is bound for New York to accept an assistant producer gig at ESPN. Her career choice comes as great relief to her widowed father, Ray Peyton, a senior. Michael Keaton, a fading NASCAR champ who wants his less than promising a son. Green Meyer, not his born to drive, to carry on the family tradition of high-speed competition. Before she can leave the West Coast, however, Maggie makes a fateful visit to an auto junkyard to procure low-cost transportation. That's where she spots Herbie, the magical VW Bug, in a sorry state of disrepair. Unaware of the car's miraculous powers, she buys the apparent clunker for $75. It doesn't take long for her to discover what a bargain she's found. Indeed, Maggie wins a street race without really trying, without really driving. Actually, when the mysteriously sensient Herbie takes her along for the ride, Willie defeating an ultra-expensive rig driven by vainglorious champ Trip Murphy, Matt Dillon. Encouraged by Kevin, Justin Long, and mechanic friend and would-be suitor, Maggie contrives to continue racing without the knowledge of her disapproving father. Naturally, since this is a G-rated Disney pick, Nothing good comes of this deception, just us naturally. However, resourceful Maggie and resilient Herbie have the right stuff to weather a few speed bumps, including a deer through a demolition derby and a couple of grudge matches with Drippin' on their way to the winner's circle. Given the amount of tabloid coverage recently given to Lohan's off-screen travails, some people who have nothing better to do may peruse Fully Loaded for signs of the star's much publicized physical gains and losses. Insert joke about headlights here. But vast majority of pics targeted on will pay little heed to such matters and instead will enjoy the perky sincerity of Lohan's appealing perf as a young woman feeling her way through a coming-of-age transition that takes her from skateboarding to fast-tracking. For the record, Herbie Fully Loaded is Lohan's third Disney remake or sequel after 1998's The Parent Trap and 2003's Freaky Friday. Not surprisingly, Herbie and his various stand-ins or drive-ins or whatever easily upstages all of Lohan's human co-stars. Still, it's worth noting that Keaton, Long and Dillon are thoroughgoing pros in a role that usually attract attention only when they're overplayed. Even also the sneering villain of the piece, Dillon tries to keep things real, giving a perf that is genuinely funny but effectively understated. Another standout, Jill Ritchie as Maggie's ditzy friend, is just comical enough in small doses. Tech wizards led by visual effects supervisor John Van Vliet provide movie magic that, except for flashes of obvious trickery, appear deliberately damped down to better resemble the look of earlier Herbie adventures. Sight gags involving Herbie's defense mechanisms, spurting oil, ejection seats, flapping doors, etc. Inexpressive accessories, including a smiling front bumper, are old-school touches that, despite their familiarity, generate most of the laughs that we're designed to get. Ever see one of those movies where you're moaning crap through the first 2/3s, and then it starts gripping you in the end so that by the time it's over, you're thinking it's not so awful after all? Herbie Fully Loaded is like that. Now, I'm not saying it's any threat to a Madagascar or anything, as something both of the kiddies in the rents will enjoy, but it's not bad. It's not good, but it's not bad. Anyone with fond memories of the very silly Herbie movies of the 1970s might despair I have those memories, too, though I readily admitted that they have surely been filtered through glasses colored by childhood rosiness. But I have to admit that simplistic as it all is, I was forced to embrace the girl power message that Fully Loaded ends up sending, because it ain't about traveling pants or sisterhoods or anything so wishy-washy girl and limiting and small, like it's asking girls to learn how to accept their natural lot in life as irrational brains. It's about a gal doing something cool and aggressive and daring to be the best of everyone, male and female. I can get behind that, even if it takes forever for the movie to get there. See? You got your Maggie Keaton, Lindsay Lohan, Freaky Friday, a spunky chick and a daughter of a legendary racing family whose dad, the sweetly sad and grief-stricken widower, Ray, Michaela Keaton, White Noise, Jack Frost, wanna have any little girl of his out there in all the NASCAR racetrack. And she meets a 1963 Volkswagen Beetle with a mind of its own, which is now very near to bursting with personality, as he seemed to remember Herbie being. But oh well. The car likes Maggie and ends up pushing her to race with NASCAR comp Murphy. Matt Dillon crash one night and cools, as Murphy is pretty much the only one who gets how damn goofy this ice is supposed to be. In its foot-dragging first 2/3. The movie only ever comes alive when Dillon is on screen, reveling in his kiddie movie villainess. There's a timidity to this new Herbie that's so disappointing, because you sense that if director Angela Robinson or any of the 18 million members of the screenwriting committee had any ball bearings, this could have been actually interesting. but no one in front of the camera or behind it is able to genuinely embrace the magic and the idea of a car with its own sense of destiny, with a sense of its own greatness and spirit. Or a movie about a car that's alive. There's a lot that's dead here. I wanted to see more cars personified, for instance, and more characters getting caught up in the nuttiness of it all. There's a kind of made-for-TV smoothness to the flick. Like some guy in a suit said, "Hey, these is just going to go straight to DVD anyway, and kids got no sense of discrimination anyway, so let's just do it all on the cheap." Except, well, it doesn't cost anything for people to be excited about what they're doing, and apart from Dillon, no one here seems to be having any fun. One little girl overheard after my screening. Gosh, she couldn't have been more than 3 years old, told her mom that she wanted to be in this movie. I guess it might have been nice to feel like the cast felt the same way, and then I might have felt it that way too. I love cars and I love driving. I'd love Herbie in theory at least. Mostly I wanted to scream also fully loaded, unspoiled, and then events conspire to bring Maggie to a major NASCAR event where she's racing Herbie against Jeff Gordon, who's got a cameo, a match, and Trip Murphy and all the souped-up NASCAR cars, and I got caught up in this little girl's giving it here all in a major event in which women aren't supposed to be able to measure up, except it's not just her, is it? The car Herbie is the secret to her success. She may not be much of a driver without it. Him, whatever. Director, Angela Robinson. Screenplay, Robert Bengurant, Alfred Goff, Thomas Lennon and Melissa Miller. Story, Garant, Lennon and Mark Kapors. Producer, Robert Simons. Photography, Greg Gardner. Music, Mark Mothersbaugh. Music Supervisor, Howard DePar. Visual Effects Supervisor, John Van Vliet. Visual Effects Hollywood, A Supervisor, Thomas J. Smith. Entity FXA Supervisor, Matt Beck. An Industrial Light and Magic Supervisor, Kim Libery. A Special Effects Supervisor, Matt Sweeney. Production Design, Daniel Bradford. Production Company Disney, Lindsay Lohan, Maggie Payton, Matt Dillon, Shrika Murphy, Justin Long, Kevin, Michaela Keaton, Ray Payton Sr., Brian Meyer, A. Ray Payton, Jr., Cheryl Hines, Sally, A. Jill Ritchie, Charisma, Jimmy Simpson, A. Crash, Jeremy Roberts, Crazy Dave, A. Thomas Lennon, Larry Murphy. Teenage Maggie Payton is part of a family line of racing drivers. The family area currently down on luck in the struggle to find backing so that Maggie's not a very successful brother Ray Jr. can compete professionally as a driver. Maggie's father goes to buy her a car from the junkyard for her graduation present. Maggie is pestered by a VW bug that is scheduled for a demolition and agrees to take it. She is startled to find that the car, which she learns is named Herbie, has a will of its own, with her at the wheel. It enters itself in a street race and ends up beating racing star Trip Murphy. With her face hidden behind the visor of a racing helmet, everyone believes that Herbie was driven by a mysterious driver known as Max, and Maggie is unable to bring herself to tell her father that she is Max. Trip burns at the humiliation and schemes revenge. He sets up a rematch race, asking her to bet for their pink slips, thinking that she has abandoned him to drive Trip's car. Disconsolate, Herbie deliberately loses the race. It is up to Maggie to get Herbie back after Trip then places it in a demolition derby. She must then enter Herbie in the NASCAR race and regain the family name. The Disney rummage sale goes on. Throughout the 1990s, Thea managed to resurrect just about every animated film they had ever made as a cheap video release sequel. They then went on to remake most of their live-action films, first as TV movies, and then again as cinematic features, in the theaters. We have so far endured remakes or revivals such as The Jungle Book in 1994, 101 Dalmatians 1996, Flubber 1997, That Darn Cat 1997, The Parent Trap 1998, Freaky Friday, 2003, The Shaggy Dog 2006, Race to Witch Mountain 2009, Troll Legacy 2010, Maleficent 2014, A Cinderella 2015, The Jungle Book 2016, A Pete's Dragon 2016, A Beauty and the Beast 2017, Mary Poppins Returns 2018, Aladdin 2019, A Dumbo 2019, A Lady and the 2019, The Lion King 2019, Milan 2020, Cruella 2021, Pinocchio 2022, The Little Mermaid 2023, Peter Pan and Wendy 2023, Lilo and Stitch 2025, and Snow White 2025. Herbie Fully Loaded is a revival of the popular Herbie films that began with The Love Bug 1969, and passed through the likes of Herbie Rides Again 1974, Herbie Goes to Monte Carlo 1977, and Herbie Goes Bananas 1980, as well also the Herbie the Love Bug TV series 1982, and the TV movie remake, The Love Bug, a 1997. One admits to not being terribly enthused about Herbie Fully Loaded beforehand. Most of the original Herbie films were likable, especially the wonderfully nonsensical and surreal Herbie Rides Again. On the other hand, Herbie Fully Loaded only seemed to acre negative via publicity before it opened, like the completely ludicrous revelation that the entire film had to be digitally retouched to reduce star Lindsay Lohan's breast size after parental complaints at advanced screenings. And then there was Lindsay Lohan herself, who seemed promisingly a talented actress in the previous Disney remake of Freaky Friday. But by the time of Herbie Fully Loaded had become another celebrity whose private life, troubles with her parents, diva demands, drunken antics, car crashes, being very publicly redressed for unprofessional behavior by studio bosses, eventual drool busts, followed by rehab and jail sessions, intruded so much into the gossip columns that, like Jennifer Lopez and Mariah Carey, it reached a saturation point that started to eclipse any presence the star brought to a vehicle. On the plus side, Herbie Fully Loaded did have in the director's chair Angela Robinson, who made the wonderful Adibza 2004 and hysterically funny gay parody of Charlie's Angels 1976-81. Although after this, Robinson vanished into television for over a decade until she emerged again with Professor Marstona and the Wonder Woman 2017 about Wonder Woman's creator William and Moulton Marston. Sadly, Herbie Fully Loaded settles in with a charmless and entirely formulaic monotony. There is nothing to the film other than packaged formula. A successful franchise from the past resurrected, a cute teen star who was not even being born when the last Herbie film was made. Lots of slapstick. Easily identifiable comic villains. You can tell who they are. The car keeps squirting them with oil and a soundtrack of recognizable hits from yesteryear. From 2020's Cruella and 2021's Pinocchio to 2023's The Little Mermaid, Peter Pan, Wendy, Lilo Stitch, 2025, and Snow White, 2025. Disney has continued revisiting its classic properties for modern audiences. Herbie Fully Loaded is a revival of the beloved Herbie franchise, which began with The Love Bug in 1969 and continued through films such as Herbie Rides Again, 1974, Herbie Goes to Monte Carlo, 1977, and Herbie Goes Bananas, 1980. The franchise also included the television series Herbie the Love Bug in 1982 and the TV movie remake The Love Bug in 1997. Before watching Herbie, Fully Loaded, expectations were not particularly high. The earlier Herbie movies were generally charming, especially the wonderfully absurd and surreal Herbie Rides Again. However, the new film seemed to attract negative attention even before its release, including the widely reported controversy that scenes had to be digitally altered to reduce Lindsay Lohan's breast size after complaints from parents during early screenings. Lindsay Lohan herself was another major point of discussion. She had shown great promise as an actress in Disney's previous remake of Freaky Friday, but by the time Herbie, Fully Loaded arrived, her personal struggles, family conflicts, public controversies, reported evil behavior, legal troubles, and highly publicized lifestyle issues had begun dominating media coverage. Similar to other celebrities whose personal lives overshadowed their work, the constant attention around Lohan sometimes distracted from the projects she appeared in. On the positive side, the film had Angela Robinson as director, the filmmaker behind the enjoyable 2004 comedy DEBS and a humorous parody of Charlie's Angels. However, after Herbie, Fully Loaded, Robinson moved primarily into television for more than a decade before returning to feature filmmaking with Professor Marston and the Wonder Woman, 2017, a biographical drama about Wonder Woman creator William Moulton Marston. Unfortunately, Herbie, Fully Loaded settles into a predictable and overly familiar formula. It feels like a package designed to revive a classic franchise, a nostalgic property from the past, a young teen star, plenty of slapstick humor, obvious comic villains, a lovable talking-style vehicle, and a soundtrack filled with recognizable old hits. The story follows Maggie Payton, who must rediscover Herbie's potential while dealing with her own struggles. She has to overcome her secret connection with the car, gain her father's approval, and enter a major racing competition despite overwhelming odds. Every step of her journey follows a familiar pattern, making the outcome easy to predict. Although the film is polished and professionally made, it lacks the imaginative visual comedy and unusual charm that made the original Herbie movies memorable. It also leaves viewers wondering where Angela Robinson's clever visual humor and sharp comedic style from DEBS disappeared. Herbie, Fully Loaded was also the first Herbie movie created after the rise of CGI technology, allowing the famous Volkswagen Beetle to perform more exaggerated and fantastical movements than before. While this adds a modern touch, it also removes some of the practical magic that gave the original films their personality. One of the biggest criticisms of the movie is its overwhelming use of product placement. At times, the film resembles a NASCAR vehicle covered from top to bottom with corporate logos. The irony is noticeable because Matt Dillon's villain is portrayed as someone surrounded by corporate sponsorship, while the film itself supports the underdog family struggling to find financial backing. Whether intentional or not, the contrast creates an interesting contradiction. Herbie, the little car that refuses to disappear, remains a lovable character. Spending a summer evening with his cast and the R2-D2-like automobile is hardly the worst way to pass the time. However, the question remains, has Herbie's time truly passed? The original The Love Bug introduced Herbie in 1968 to the low-budget Disney comedy starring Dean Jones. After its unexpected box office success, a sequel followed, although Herbie Rides Again did not arrive until 6 years later. Two more films came in 1977 and 1980, followed by the short-lived television series in 1982. The Little Volkswagen continued its journey with the 1997 TV movie, proving that Herbie still had more lives than a cat. 8 years later, Disney brought the character back once again, pairing him with Lindsay Lohan in a film that works as both a continuation and a modern remake of the franchise. One notable absence is Dean Jones, who appeared in nearly every previous Herbie production except Herbie Rides Again. A cameo from him would have been a respectful tribute, even if many younger viewers may not have recognized him. The story is simple, as expected from a family film aimed at younger audiences. It combines a message of female empowerment with the structure of a traditional sports movie. Anyone who cannot predict the result of the final race has probably not seen many films of this type. That is one of the biggest weaknesses of movies built around championship games, races, or competitions. There's little real suspense because the outcome is almost always obvious. Only a highly skilled director can make such moments feel exciting and unpredictable, and unfortunately, Angela Robinson does not fully succeed here. The final NASCAR race, which serves as the movie's climax, becomes a lengthy and surprisingly dull sequence. Instead of creating excitement, it feels less thrilling than watching a real race where nothing dramatic happens. The opening credits provide a brief history of Herbie's rise and fall over the years. The story then begins with the arrival of the famous car at Crazy Dave's scrap and salvage yard, where it is about to be destroyed in a crusher. However, just before Herbie is turned into scrap metal, the vehicle catches the attention of Maggie Payton, played by Lindsay Lohan, who purchases the car for just $75. This graduation gift represents a special moment for Maggie, as her father, Ray Payton, played by Michael Keaton, proudly celebrates that his daughter is the first person in the family to earn a college degree. However, racing has always been a part of the Payton family's legacy. Ray and his father were once famous drivers, and now Maggie's brother is trying to qualify for a major race. Maggie, too, has racing in her heart. After suffering injuries in a crash years earlier, Maggie has stayed away from driving. But everything changes when she meets Herbie. The Volkswagen Beetle is no ordinary car. It has a personality of its own and pushes Maggie to step outside her comfort zone. Herbie eventually leads her into a street race against NASCAR champion Trip Murphy, played by Dillon. When Maggie and Herbie unexpectedly defeat Trip, he becomes determined to get revenge by setting up a rematch and proving that he can win at any cost. At the same time, Maggie hides her return to racing from her father because Ray has strictly forbidden her from participating in competitive driving. At its heart, Herbie, Fully Loaded is a story about the bond between a father and daughter, a young woman discovering her own path, and the journey of earning her father's trust and respect. It is also about the unique friendship between a girl and her best friend, a car with a mind and personality of its own. The film includes a small romantic subplot featuring Justin Long as Maggie's love interest, but it is not a major part of the story and can easily be overlooked. The romance feels less important, especially considering the writer's difficulty in creating a convincing love story. The real focus remains on the classic underdog journey, with Maggie and Herbie becoming an unlikely pair of champions. Together, they find success. While separated, they struggle to overcome their challenges. Herbie, Fully Loaded was directed by Angela Robinson and written by Thomas Lennon, with a story based on characters created by Robert Simmons. The film stars Lindsay Lohan in the lead role, with cinematography by Greg Gardner, editing by Wendy Green, and music composed by Mark Mothersbaugh. The movie was produced by Walt Disney Pictures and distributed by Buena Vista Pictures Distribution. It was released on May 10, 2005, with a runtime of 101 minutes. The film was produced in the United States, in the English language, with a budget of $50 million. It earned approximately $144.1 million at the worldwide box office. This was the review and some interesting information about Herbie, Fully Loaded, 2005. We hope you enjoyed the video and learned something new about this fun racing adventure. If you like today's content, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching.